In this video, we're going to be installing these CANLESS recessed LED lights right here in this bedroom or office. I'm going to show you what I do to space them out on the ceiling, and I'm also going to show you how I'm going to supply power to these things. This video is going to be action-packed all the way through, so stay tuned, and without further ado, let's dive right in. So depending on your personal preferences where you really want to put these lights, I personally don't like them scrunched in the middle. I like them a little bit closer to the walls than the middle. I've got these spaced at 32 from this wall and 36 from that wall, and I did that all the way around to keep them all the same. But whatever your preference is what your preference is. Now, one of the nice things about these lights is they're thin, and if you happen to have a piece of wood right where you need to put one of the lights, it's not a problem. It's going to work anyway. At least most of the time it's going to work. You just have to make sure and orient the light so that the power thing where it comes out and the springs and all that stuff are away from the wood, and it's still going to work because they're less than ½ an inch thick. Now what I did, once I got everything measured where I thought I was going to be happy with it, I put little pieces of painter's tape on the ceiling and marked everything with an X in the center of where I wanted the lights. That way they're all the same. And then I took a bicycle spoke and I drove a spoke up right through the X. You may not have a spoke laying around, but something long and skinny will work too. That way when you get up in the attic, you'll see the spoke sticking up past the insulation, and you'll be able to swipe the insulation aside. That way when you do that, you can either look for wires that might be right where your hole is at, or obstacles or whatever. This way you'll see that everything is clear, and when you cut the holes out, all that insulation is not going to fall into the room. Once you put the light back in, you can fix the insulation back. That's why I like to use IC rated lights, because they can go right to the insulation and you don't have to worry about that. So once you got everything established, you've got your 4 spokes up in the ceiling and you've already pushed the insulation out of the way, go ahead and take your spoke out. And now we'll use another spoke to put right through the middle of our pattern, and we'll use the spoke to center the pattern right where we want it. We'll go ahead and draw a circle around this. Now when we go ahead and saw this out, I'm going to use a drywall saw like this one right here. This is going to work just fine, but what I like to do is kind of cover everything up. As you can kind of see, I got all the stuff covered up that I don't want full of dust. And I'm going to hold a vacuum. Now I've got this. Here's a pro tip. Strap your vacuum to a ladder if you don't have anybody around to hold that. That way it's not falling on you. And when you're sawing it, you can hold the hose right up there, and it'll catch most of the dust. And I say most of it because there's still going to be a little bit of a mess. All right, let's go ahead and saw. Now, if I didn't have attic access and I've already gone into the attic to verify that everything was clear, like if you're doing this in a basement or something, you'll want to saw very shallow like this because you can't see what's up in there to make sure you're not going to hit any wires and stuff like that. But we know we're clear, so we can saw away. Alright, so I'm standing here closest to the light that's going to be fed from my light switch. I have a light switch right here that's a 2-gang. We're going to be taking that out and feeding a wire up to this light, and we're going to replace this 2-gang with a 3-gang. From there, I'm going to go from my first light, just like Christmas lights, to the second light, to the third light, and then to the last light over there. Very simple. This one gets 2 sets of wires, one feeding in, one feeding out. The other 2 get 2 sets of wires, and then the last one gets 1 set. All right? Now to minimize my time in the attic, I've got these fiberglass rods right here that I've got the wire taped to. So we're going to feed this through the attic over to the next light fixture. I should be able to reach my hand up there and grab that. Oh yeah, I see it right here. Very simple. Cut my tape, and there's my wire. Now I like to kind of bend them like that. That'll keep it from slipping back when I'm not here to watch it. Alright, so what I'm going to do, I'm not going to show it. I'm going to feed to the next light and then to the next light. Very simple to do. I just showed you how to do one. They're all the same. I'll be right back. So I've gone ahead and ran all the wires that I needed to run using the method I just showed you. And since I have attic access, I've gone ahead and added staples to those wires, usually within about 12 inches of the light fixture and about every 4 feet in between. Now, as I said earlier, this one is fed from the switch, and then that goes over to the second light, and then the second light gets 2 wires, the third light gets 2 wires, and then we're going to wind up with 1 set of wires on the 4th light. And I've gone ahead and fixed back all the insulation on all 3 lights except for this one right here that we're going to be working on. So I just wanted to show you this one because the rest of them are all the same anyway, right? Now I've got the feed coming in right here. This one is going to be coming from our switch box, and this wire is the one that we ran earlier that goes over to the number 2 light. Now the rest of the spool of the feed is still sitting on top of the wall so that we can run it down to our switch box. Obviously we haven't got there yet, but we're going to try to get these 4 lights in first. So this style of light uses the light fixture and then a separate J-box with a pigtail that goes in between. Now that's quite a bit different from a regular can light that uses everything all in one enclosure. The J-box might be separated, but it's all tied together with a piece of metal. So I didn't think it was a good idea just to leave that J-box flopping around by itself in the attic, just on a pigtail. So on 2 of the lights, there was a joist member that was close enough to the light fixture where I could mount the J-box to, and then on the other 2, I had to add a piece of wood in there so I had something to screw the J-box to. Now when these lights, when they quit, the whole light fixture quits, or at least the fixture does. The J-box part might still be good. But it's a good idea to buy some spare lights. When you order these, if you know you're only going to put in 4, you might order 6 or 8, something like that, so you have some extras in the future because you don't know if the same light is still going to be available for you. So make sure and get some extra ones. Now you want to go ahead and knock these plugs out on the side right here. They got a little hole in them, so just use a screwdriver to pull them out. And then don't try to put these in with no grommet. You'll want to use some kind of a connector there, whether it's one of those Romex connectors or these plastic ones that I like to use. Just make sure when you push it in, the fingers are going the right way. Go ahead and push it inside. Probably push in about 6 inches worth of wire. Once you get the wires where you want them, just go ahead and take a razor knife, being very careful not to let that slip off of there, and stay in the middle of the wire. Kind of try to keep your hand above the wire or above the knife, and do that. And just peel it like a banana. And just cut it back. Just like so. Do the same thing on the other one. Now we're going to want to get our wires in these connectors right here. We got white, black, and ground. We got white, black, and ground. So very simple. We don't need to peel the ground, so we can just put them in. And go ahead and push that inside the box. Now one thing I wanted to mention, if I didn't mention before, is you want to check your source of where the power is coming from. We're using 14 gauge wire here, right, because it's white. The 12 gauge is yellow, at least the modern wire is. Now if your feed that you're tapping in from is 20 amp, make sure you use the right size wire, the yellow 12 gauge. We're on a 15 amp, and most of the time you're going to be on a 15 amp for a light circuit. So let's go ahead and peel. And just simply push them in, white to white, black to black. Couldn't be easier. So before I push the wires in, I wanted to explain about this switch right here that's staring at you. There's 4 different positions here, and this is the color temperature switch. You need to make sure that these match on all the lights, otherwise you're going to have some lights that just don't look right, okay? I've got mine set to 4,000, and I've made sure that all the other 3 lights match as well, so that's an important point right there. Alright, so that's probably pretty good right there. So I'm just going to go ahead and close the lid and push this up in the attic, and we'll hook our light up. And basically just bend the spring up in top of there like so. Very simple to put in. Very good. Now when I go back up in the attic, I'll mount that box on the piece of wood that I've got up there. Okay, so remember earlier I said I wanted to take the 2-gang box out and turn it into a 3-gang. We're going to have our recessed lighting, our fan, and our fan light. So I need 3 switches here. Now if you cut the hole out first, you'll have a lot easier time removing this old box, but you'll want to check and verify which side of the box your stud is on, because if you cut the hole where your stud happens to be, it's just going to be a whole lot of sadness. So we don't want to do that. So all I did for this mark was I just held this up here perfectly where the original box was, and I put a level up here. Make sure I make it straight, okay? And then just simply just trace around it like I already did right here. That's all I did. And this is also the point in this project where you definitely do want to shut off the power, because we're going to be removing this whole thing right here. All right, so I've gone ahead and unscrewed the switches and pulled everything out of here, as you can see. Now, I made a couple of notations earlier about feeding power to this thing, to your lights. Well, one of the things you need to make sure of, maybe even before you start the project, is make sure you have power that's fed into your box here, like source power that's there 100% of the time, regardless of the positions of the switches. If you don't have that, you're going to have a hard time making your can lights work. So just make sure that you do have that. If you don't, you'll have to feed power into this box from another source. So just want you to be aware of that too. Okay, so let's go ahead and unscrew all this. Luckily, we don't have a clamp, you know, one of those crimp rings that goes on the grounds. We just have a wire nut here. If you do have a crimp ring on your ground, just take a pair of pliers and kind of squeeze around it to try to make it come back bigger again, and then you can pull those things right off. Okay, so I've got all the wires pulled apart and straightened out. You got to straighten them out to get them out. And also what you have to do is go in here and kind of release the wires. Otherwise, when you try to get this box out, you're going to tear your wires up. So I carefully put a screwdriver in and kind of did this on all my wires to release the clamps on the wires. I did that on all of them. Now let's see if I can get this to come off of the wall right here. So take your flat bar and kind of push it in between the wall and the box and the stud, and push this way away from the drywall. This way you don't damage the drywall. Just be patient and slowly work it out of there. This is why we cut this out first, so now we got plenty of room for this. There we go, we're free. So what we're going to have to do is cut these ears off right here. All right, that should work a little better. There we go. Success. All right, so here's the top view of that last light we just put in. I went ahead and mounted the J-box to this piece of wood that I braced between the two truss members there. And as you can see, I've got this roll of wire right here. Now, I obviously don't want to feed down 200 feet of wire through the wall, because that'll make a big mess. So what I did was I measured from the ceiling down to our hole down there that we just made, and then I added about 1.5 feet just to make sure I don't get anything too short. Now I've located the top side of the wall right here where the wires come through for the existing switch that we had. Now obviously there's no room right here to add wire, plus they've filled it with spray foam, and I'll talk about that here in a second. Here's our 2x4 right here, our stud. So we should have at least 16 inches that way until we get to the next stud. So I'm going to go ahead and drill down through here. I'm only going to put a 1/2 inch hole in here, but you don't want to drill too close, like right next to the hole that's already there, because you might wind up hitting the wire that's in there. So we're going to come out this way a few inches to make sure we're in the clear. Now I don't have a helper today to help me fish that out of there, so I'm just going to feed down the whole thing. It's only about 5 feet long, so it shouldn't be a big deal. Now, I mentioned earlier that this original hole had spray foam in it. Well, I don't have any spray foam handy, and I'm not going to buy a whole can of spray foam just for one hole right here. If you have any of the spray foam, get the orange stuff. It's fire rated. So if you have any pink insulation, you can push pink insulation in there. I don't have any of that handy either, so I'm just going to use this fiberglass. We got plenty of this right here, and I'm going to push that down in the hole. Now the reason I'm doing that is for fire blocking. It keeps the air transfer from going to the wall, from the wall to the ceiling, and that should be good to go with this. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and cover this back up. I'm going to cover up my last light that we put in, and we'll be done up here. All right, so we're back down from the attic. Here's my wire right here. I didn't plant it there. That's where it fell, so I got lucky on that. Didn't even have to stick my arm in there. Got plenty of wire, so my measurement was perfect. So I'm going to use this smart box right here. I kind of like these because they have the screws that go down at a 45-degree angle right into the stud right here. And I've already knocked out the clamps so I can just feed my wires down. I got 3 coming in from the top and 1 from the bottom. When you feed the wires down, see, I'm putting this is our new one. This is going to be our lights that we're putting in. So I'm going to put them in on the right side right here because that's where I want my switch, on the right. Because it'll be the first one when you walk in the door. All right, so there we go. We'll go ahead and screw that to the wall. There we go. And this is our new wire that we ran just now. We're going to peel that one, strip it, peel it, whatever. Try to stay on the center and strip it like a banana. Now, I'm not going to cut any of these short until I see exactly how long I want them to be. I've done that in the past where I cut wires too short and then I wish I hadn't. So I like to leave everything long and then cut it once I see where it's going to be. So we're going to start with the grounds. Now they got this one long too because they were jumping from one switch to another, so I'm going to leave it like that. So you kind of want your short ones to be about equal length right there, so when we twist it, they're going to wind up in the same spot. All right, so we got 2 long ones right here, so instead of putting the wire nut back, I'm going to go ahead and use a crimp sleeve. And let's go ahead and fold this up in the back of the box. All right, so to save time, I went ahead and cut my long white one back from our new wire that was equal with the rest of the 3 wires that was already there. So let's go ahead and twist our commons together, trying to keep the ends pretty even. All right, so these 2 wires right here, the red and the black, this goes up to our fan. One's for the fan light, one's for the fan motor. And then these 2 blacks right here, one's coming in from the feed and one's going out to a plug somewhere in the room. I don't know which one is which. It doesn't really matter because they're getting tied together anyway. So we're going to have these 2, and then I'm going to add 3 pigtails to this, one for each switch, to feed, each switch, and then of course we have these 3 to the other side of the switch. All right, so I got all 5 of those twisted together, so we're going to go ahead and add a wire nut. And once you get the wire nut tight, I like to give each one of them a pull just to make sure we don't have any loose characters in there. All right, so to save a minute, I went ahead and hooked up our original 2 switches the way they were. Up here we have our feed pigtails. Remember, we put the 3 feed pigtails on there. The bottom right here, we have our red wire going to the fan light, and down here we have our black wire going to the fan motor. And we have our long ground coming in here, looping around the ground screw, as you can see right here, and then coming over to the other one and stopping here. So we still have a ground left for our new switch. Now when you're pushing these switches in the box right here, make sure you watch the ground. Make sure that ground doesn't wind up getting close to one of your hot wires right here. All right, so I've got my other 2 switches in. By the way, switches do have a top, at least single pole ones do, so keep that in mind. I've got my ground here bent in a loop, and my other 2 are straight. Now I'm going to use a 3-way switch on this application because I don't have another one of these Decora type switches like this. It's a single pole. It's going to work just fine, not a problem. I've gone ahead and stripped the wires according to the strip gauge on the back of the switch right here. So let's go ahead and put these under the clamp plates. like so, and then we'll go ahead and hook up our ground. Now keep in mind the screw tightens up clockwise, so make sure that your loop goes around the screw clockwise like so. And we are almost ready for some juice. All right, I got this thing back together, got the power turned on. Whoa. Wow, what a difference. Beautiful. That's quite the difference. Okay, well, I hope this video has brought some value to you. I hope it's given you some ideas. Thanks for watching.